If you're trying to write a book, listen, start with a little blog, start. You have everything that you need to succeed within you already. Start with what you have, and every day you'll look better. This is a good reminder for me.
Welcome to the Pond Journal Club. I'm your host, Uncle Lou, and today it's just Brian and I for the Pond Journal Club. And what we'll be just covering today is from aspirations to actualization, when your transformation becomes reality. And Brian, just to go ahead and kick us off, you mind sharing your wellness score and how you're doing today?
Hello, everyone. I'm going to say about a 7 today. About a 7, maybe a 6. I've not been very productive today, and I just read some alarming news on LinkedIn about someone I know, and it has me in a contemplative space and reminded me that you need to take care of yourself first.
Mm.
So holding space for him and thinking about how unproductive I've been today. So I'm going to say a 6 or 7. But I expect by the end of this podcast and by the time I go to bed at night to be up to a 9 or 10 because I do have a plan of action to complete some work before I go to bed. Yeah, about a 7, hoping to get to a 9 or 10 tonight.
Yeah, no, I I totally feel that. I myself, I would say, is at a 6 or 7 as far as my wellness score. It's just been a lot going on at work, really busy, a lot going on in my personal life as well. And I'm at a point where I am staying afloat and I am able to take on the challenges of the day, but it's more so just taking it a day at a time as opposed to just having the bull by the horns.
You made a good point, taking it each day, one day at a time. That's not only just a good TV show, it is a very good practice to have. You take one day at a time and see everything, see it, but not see it through the lens of like non-judgment. So
Right.
not judging ourselves for being a 6 or 7 or for whatever the reason we are, but just acknowledging it and having a plan to say, okay, I'm going to improve this. Yeah, one day at a time.
That's all you can do. So I think this is a really good pivot into what we're talking about today. When we say when your transformation becomes reality, there becomes that we've gone through the phase of saying, hey, I want to make this change. This is something that I see for myself. It's past that conceptual state. And now we're actually putting that into reality and putting action behind those things. And it's not like a light switch. And I think that leads into the first question of reflecting on your own definition of success. What or who inspired it?
Success for me is not necessarily money or status, although I think those things tie into it to some degree are a byproduct of success sometimes. But for me, it's like having meaningful impact. And I would say my students, because when I see them, I see opportunity for meaningful impact.
Yeah.
And that inspires me to go hard, to put in work, to achieve my goal of success, which is having the impact on them. And I've seen the results of it, and I would say them. And if I had to go further, I did have a teacher, Maddie B. Washington. Maddie B. taught me 5th and 6th grade social studies, and I still talk to her today. I go and visit her when I can, and Maddie B was a tough lady. Maddie B didn't play. Maddie B also actually never really taught social studies either, but she did teach us a lot of life lessons sitting in the chair. Never saw her get up around the board, but Maddie B had school, sit in that chair every day. She taught us a lot of life lessons. And if I got all of her students in a room, they couldn't tell you what chapter 4 was about or what social studies lesson we learned. What they can tell you is that she changed their life. And she made us learn the Gettysburg Address, the preamble to the Constitution, and against the law, she made us learn the 23rd Psalms.
Hmm.
And we recited the 23rd Psalms every morning after the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, wow.
She did. And when they said something to her about it, she said, okay, stop me. Nobody did.
Yeah.
While I don't advocate for prayer and Bible teaching in public school, I don't advocate for that, but Maddie B did it. And she was just a hell of a teacher. And that's who I wanted to be. But my own way, I guess I have been mad at B because while I'm not teaching 23rd Psalms, I have been very inclusive in my teaching practices and wanting people to be inclusive, not tolerant because I hate that word, but inclusive and accepting. So I've done that. So in my own way, I guess I've been mad at B. But yeah, mad at B and my students.
You said something there that really touched back to something we talked about in previous journal clubs as far as starting your PhD. And in this iteration of like conversations of betting on yourself, having that attitude like Maddie B saying, stop me. If this is something that I want to do and I believe is right, then I'm going to do it. And for you, I believe that you've practiced that for yourself with this PhD program. And what I'm curious about from there is what really inspired you to make that leap. We talked about previously being in the PhD program and what that process looked like for you, but making the real leap to say, I don't want to be Brian Wesley Harrington, the teacher. I don't want to be Brian Wesley Harrington, the school counselor. I don't want to be Brian Wesley Harrington, the instructor. I want to be Dr. Harrington. I want to be my own consultant. I want to have my own practice. And literally over the past couple of months, as we've been talking about transformations, you've been making those steps towards making that a reality and having your first client, being in a program to make you that leap light for you, because I think that's like a really challenging thing for people to do, is to take that first step when they're unsure if the stone they're landing on is going to be firm or not.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Melvin. I'm going to try to make this succinct and not take 10 minutes to answer the question because it's a good question, but it's a lot that made me go to that leap. Loved being a school counselor, was at a school and had a very crappy year. It was a very toxic work environment in my department, in my office. And I'd always wanted a PhD, but even at that time, I was thinking, I'm gonna go to get a specialist and I'm gonna keep working because I don't want to quit working full time, blah, blah, blah. And I was gonna quit there and go back to work at a school I used to work for and drive 1 hour and just so I could keep being a school counselor. But I just knew I need to get out of that school, that this wasn't the fit for me. It wasn't right. Something was off. I was not really walking in what I probably should be walking in.
Mm.
And so I got an offer to go to another school, not the one I had intended to go to, but the one I intended to go back to rather. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll go over here. It's a nice school, team, blah, blah. I get over there, hell, again. Started off beautifully and it just went to shit again. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I was talking to my lead counselor. She would say, Brian, you're just too big for it. You got so much that you are a leader. You just too big for one school. And she ended up leaving, which is what started the hellish year for me because long story short, my supervisors took their anger out with her on me. And so talking to her about being too big for one school, I was very uncomfortable at the school. I kept thinking, this can't be life. Like, I am not happy. I am serving my kids. I'm enjoying the interactions with them, but I feel like I'm missing something. And this is not maybe where I should be, but I'm still trying to make it fit. I'm trying to make it fit. And my financial advisor, he and I were meeting at the end of the year. You meet and you discuss your goals for the next year. If you want to up your contributions and so forth. So I was talking to him about it. And he and I don't know each other very well, but I just was led to talk to him about it. He's a man of faith, like myself. And so he said, Brian, he said, I'm not telling you what to do. He said, but I will say this. As we're talking, he said, I feel God in this conversation. And I feel like there's more to you than just that school. And when he said that, he echoed the same thing that my lead counselor told me and that other people have told me. And to hear from someone that I didn't know well and that was also a person of faith, it made me think, let me think about this. So I went in prayer and I felt like I heard God say, and I know I heard God say, moving to another school is not going to solve the problem. is not the answer. And so I said, okay, I'm not going to find another school to go work for. I'm going to sit and figure out what I'm going to do next. Insert PhD program.
Yeah.
To answer your question, it took me being in two very uncomfortable spaces and realizing,
Yeah.
hey, this is not to say that every space we're supposed to be in is going to be super peaceful and comfortable, but I knew these weren't the right place. They were just placeholders. There was no peace
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And it took me saying, okay, Brian, are you going to keep minimizing yourself to be what you think you should be? Or are you going to step out on, like you said, this stone that maybe so not be so firm and see what else is out there for you? And so I knew I
Yeah.
wanted a PhD, and I realized that doing it, I could change by getting it and earning it and starting to work as a consultant, as a professor. I could change so many more lives of students that I could being at just one. And so the leap came from being uncomfortable and stepping out on faith, listening to the right people, stepping out on faith, and also at the end, just keeping my why in the forefront of my mind, saying, you know what? I know I want to impact the lives of young people through education and mental health. What better way to do it on a larger scale than this?
I really love that. And thank you for sharing that. And I think, what you highlighted there is literally the various steps of the transformation process, right? You were in a space where understanding and identifying who you are as an individual, your priorities, your values, your red flags, your likes, dislikes, all these different things, it allowed you to recognize that the space that you were in wasn't the right fit. Sometimes you got to ask that question, right? I know whenever I was a kid, I would say, my mom always says I'm not sports inclined, but I always called myself trying to play sports. But when I'm on the second and third string for every single team that I play on, it's I can sit here and keep putting myself in these situations, knowing that from a personal perspective, I don't have any ambitions to really go professional with it or pursue any kind of goals outside of I really just wanted a jersey. Then it's like what I'm in is essentially not a good fit. And I can take that time that I'm using on the field and apply it to something that is a better fit for me, whether it be music. For me, it was speech and debate, and I flourished through it. And I think that's something that is a really pivotal point, is realizing that this truly isn't the right fit for me. And because I've done this self-reflection, I'm going to pursue what I feel to be the right fit. And I'm curious, you've talked a little bit like in previous episodes about being in the presence of your instructors, your professors, and saying, hey, these feels like my peers, these feel like my colleagues, this feels like where I belong. I'm curious when that transformation hit into reality and you became the student that you are, how have you been able to hold back some of the other behaviors before you were a student? So what we talked about beforehand, working all nights because whenever you were working, it was like, okay, I go to work and then I come home and I do whatever I want to do. And then shifting to that student aspect, what has that been like for you?
It's been tough as hell, and I actually have not quite, I'm not quite mastered it yet. It's been difficult because it's been a while since I've been a full-time student, and it's been very difficult. I've been successful in the sense that I've gotten all my work done by the deadline, but not the way I want to get it done.
Mm.
I don't want to be working on it 5 minutes up to the point it's due and then rushing to get to class or rushing to hit the submit button or then I'm hopped up on coffee and energy drink because I'm working 4 hours straight trying to get it done when I could have been working on it, a little bit at a time all week. So it's been tough. One thing I did to try to help is I created this beautifully designed, color coded Google Calendar
Yeah.
that I don't look at until an alert pops up to say you have 10 minutes before internship or you have 10 minutes before multicultural counseling. I did the calendar to help me some kind of organization, and I'm going to start using it. This week has already started off a little unproductive as far as today, but tomorrow I go to school and I'm gonna get up in the morning and look at my calendar and just say, oh, let me plan out my day. Let me put in the forefront of what I have to do today, and just keep that and use that to help me stay on track. And also, I'm going to have to remember that when I got my master's and my undergrad as a full-time student, every day wasn't a super productive day,
Mm.
but I still got those degrees. So every day here is not going to be super productive. Every day is not going to be perfect. I'm not going to cross everything off my to-do list. There will be some days where I get half the work done and I end up watching Suits for 3 hours and falling asleep. Okay, that just means the next day I got to work a little harder to catch up. So just remembering that this is not the first time I've been a full-time student and that I succeeded before. This time, although it's a different kind of program, it's going to take a different level of commitment, but that I can do it. But it has been a difficult transition.
I think what you're talking about there, we're going to talk about in like future journal clubs. And I'm really interested to just see how some of those conversations go, because you're absolutely right. It's not like always going to be on it. There's going to be days that you kind of slip and fall. And thinking about just whenever you're taking that step of turning your dreams, your goals into a reality, just remembering to the fact that keeping in the forefront of your mind that it's not always going to be really easy, but and remembering your why and remembering your goal and your passion that you're having for it, it makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, it does. It does. It it makes it a whole lot easier because you
Yeah.
have something you are affixed to. You have your mind affixed on this goal. Yeah. And I know you were a full-time student at Brown. So leaving Tougaloo, and at Tougaloo you worked. Um,
Yeah.
I remember you working at the VA or something, didn't you?
Mhm.
Yeah. So going from there, you left and you moved miles and miles away to be a full-time student. So what was that like? That transition to from Tougaloo to Brown, and you were there for 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah, 2 years. I think for me, that transition from Tougaloo to Brown it was more introspective than it was a outward change experience. Yeah, I was in a new location, but fortunately for me, I knew people in Rhode Island because I did a semester exchange while I was in undergrad. And so I knew people at Brown, I knew the area a little bit, and I was in that space in my life where I wanted to do a lot of exploring. I wanted to see what was new and things of that nature. But what really was the interesting trick for me was realizing how I was going to make that transformation for myself when times got rough, and no longer having the support of long-term friends or immediate family in the vicinity, and learning how to process things internally. And so for me, I think you say it was 2 years, but I really think those 2 years were a true incubator period, because once I got out of the program, I built some skills for myself that allowed me to say, hey, once I leave Rhode Island, I can go all the way all to the another side of the country in Seattle and be perfectly fine. And so I think what that transition was for me was it catapulted me into my next big transition.
What would you say the biggest lesson you learned during that time? You said incubator, giving birth, growing
But
as a person. That's what we think about when we think incubators. What would you say is the biggest lesson you learned during that time?
yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like the biggest lesson that I learned was how significant family was to me and what my priorities and what my values were. Because for me, grad school necessarily wasn't easy. And it took a lot of understanding that why, understanding what I was doing, what my values and how it aligned to that to keep me going. And I think for me, it really helped me understand the power of having that why. And I would say that would probably be the biggest lesson that I learned from that, which honestly, there's no right or wrong time to learn what your why is or learn about your values or anything. But I think for me, that was a really pivotal moment because, like I said, I was outside of my own comfort of my home and outside of the values and priorities that I was reared in, and then placed in a new space. And with all of those various different variable factors that lead to having that impact, for me, it it really helped strengthen what those values were for me and solidify that.
I think I I know that being certain of your value is very important.
Uh,
It's very important. If you don't know your core value, you can be persuaded to do things on your job or in social situations, just whatever that go against who you are as a person. Because you're just
mhm.
going with the flow. But if you know your values, you have something to stand on and you know who you are. I feel like they help guide you to make decisions. And I think a lot of us, you said there are no certain time to learn them. I don't think I learned mine until probably I was 31, 32.
Mm,
I knew, I knew, but I wasn't certain. Because if you'd asked me what success meant to me 10 years ago, I wouldn't have given you the answer I gave you today.
yeah.
I would have
You,
talked about money, house, like stuff like that. There's a guy I follow on TikTok. He's a screenwriter, author, influencer, Tariq Ali.
uh,
And he made a video. He talked about what luxury is. And he talked about how when he first started making money, he would go buy bags and clothes and this. And he said he still likes those things. But he discovered what true luxury for him was. And it was being able to take 6 months off to learn how to be a screenwriter. It was him going to Vermont for a month and just spending time with other creators and learning about himself. And for me, I enjoy things. I like a good bag. I like a trip. I like to go out and bar hop and stuff. I love doing things that require a lot of money. But what I really enjoy is not having to worry about like bills. So for
yeah.
me, that doesn't mean $1 million. That just means I make enough money to where I'm not concerned whether or not I'm gonna have to eat bologna or can I go eat what I want to eat. A luxury for me is being able to say, you know what, I'm taking these 2 weeks off. I'm not gonna see any clients. I'm not gonna take sober. I'm just gonna do nothing. You know,
Yeah.
that's what luxury means to me now. And success doesn't mean a certain kind of car, a certain kind of house. It means is the work I'm doing having a meaningful impact on the community in which I serve? Am I able to do this work comfortably?
I'm going to say two things. One, I think this is a good pivot to mention forecasting our future product that we're having with Don't Be Coy as far as a electronic journal that individuals can be able to leverage. And I know that's something you and I are working on, collaborating with Gifted Minds. But I think this is a really good opportunity to mention that to help people understand how to find their why and define their why and not to be coy with that. And then interesting as far as another pivot, as far as one of the reasons that I really wanted you to be a part of the journal club is because of not only your clinical, but your academic and practical spirit experience with being a counselor. And so I guess a question that I have, or a final question that I have is, what kind of advice would you give to individuals to stay focused and committed on their transformation goals?
Stay focused and committed. Well, for one, the goal itself, I would invite people to say, one, is it a SMART goal? Is it specific, measurable, attainable, out there, realistic? So, is it a SMART goal? Also, did you set the goal or did someone set this for you? Or
Mm,
did you set the goal for yourself or did you set it for someone else? Is this something that you want to do?
yeah.
Is this something that is important to you? Is this something that aligns with your core values? If yes to all of those things, then that's a good starting point. You have your goal in place. To stay focused on it, I've said this 5 times over the course of this episode. Remember your why. And there's a quote, I can't think of who says it now, but they say, if you remember your why, you can power through any how.
Mm,
So if you remember your why, if your why is, for example, my why is to improve the lives of young people through education and mental health. That's my why. Any how that comes up, be it having to stay up awake 2 nights in a row to finish assignments, having to be a full-time student for 3 years and not make a salary, but be a grad assistant, not being able to do things I used to do when I worked full time. Anything I encounter in academic from my professors, any kind of we want to act like it doesn't exist. Some people want to act like it doesn't exist, but any kind of academic hazing I get. I also go to a predominantly white institution. Just anything that comes up that's going to be a barrier to me,
mhm.
if I keep my why in the forefront of my mind, it makes me say, you know what? I will deal with this and I will power through it because if I don't, I'm not going to improve the lives of young people through education and mental health. So I would advise that have their why somewhere visible at all times. I don't care if it's your lock screen, if it's a picture on your wall, whatever. Make sure your why is visible to you and that you keep it on your mind at all times. There's a scripture in the Bible that talks about whatever is true, whatever is good, what is righteous, think on these things. And Jesus was trying to tell you think on these things to have joy and have peace. In that same vein, keeping your why and your goal in the forefront of your mind, thinking on those things help you power through those not so good. So I would say that. And I would also say community is very important. You need to surround yourself with people who they may not have the same goals and dreams as you, same why as you, but they support your why. When I talk to somebody about my why and my dream, I want them to light up. I want them to seem interested in it. I
Mhm.
know that's my community. When I talk to you, when I talk to Ashley, y'all listen. Y'all are asking questions. You're intrigued by it. You light up and you give me, y'all affirm me to more and make me want to keep going. So community is very important as well. You have to have some people in your corner who fully support you and your vision and your dream. Because I don't care what anybody says, you can't do life alone. You can't do life alone. And it doesn't always mean a romantic partner. It just means you need community. You need support. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Man, as always, it's been really great. Do you have what are those things called? Do you have those tarot cards?
They love calling them tarot cards. I actually do have one.
I should put a
Okay.
disclaimer. These are not tarot cards.
These are not tarot cards for anybody to get weirded out by anything mystical or tarot cards. Because there's some people who do get weirded out by those. These are actually, they're called reminder deck. It's a reminder deck. It's 33 reminders to tap into the boundless potential we have to expand and grow. This guy, Hindsight, wonderful and creative. He designed these cards and they are amazing. And I watch him on YouTube sometimes as he goes through the deck and he talks about them. And it's just beautiful. So I try to use them at least 2 or 3 times a week. But this one, it says, I don't know if y'all can see it or not, but it says, sometimes all that you have is all that you need. And on the back, it says, don't underestimate yourself, my friend. God has given you everything that you need to succeed. Sometimes all that you have is truly all that you need. You are ready. So I like this in the context of goal setting and staying focused on it. Sometimes we don't want to start a project or fully commit to something because, oh, I don't have this. I don't have the right camera. I don't have the right background set up. I don't have the right software. Listen, put your iPhone up. If you don't have a tripod, lean it up against the wall. If you don't have a mic, put your AirPods in. Start. Just start. If you're trying to write a book, listen, start with a little blog. Start. You have everything that you need to succeed within you already. Start with what you have. And every day gets a little better. This is a good reminder for me. Yeah, this is a very good reminder for me. Thank you, Hindsight.
All right, man. As always, really appreciate it, man. And Hope you have a great rest of your day.
You do the same. Thank you for having me.